What if I told you that the only U.S. president to resign from office was also responsible for creating the Environmental Protection Agency and opening relations with China, BEN? Richard Nixon's presidency is one of the most fascinating paradoxes in American political history.
That's such an interesting contrast, Pappy. The man who became synonymous with political scandal was also behind some of our most important diplomatic and environmental achievements.
And what's really striking about Nixon's China strategy was how it completely transformed global politics. Here was this staunch anti communist stepping off Air Force One in Beijing in 1972, ending decades of isolation between our countries. The brilliance was in how he used his anti communist reputation to make it politically possible.
Hmm. And that visit to China actually strengthened America's position against the Soviet Union, right? Playing these two communist powers against each other while improving relations with both.
Exactly. And it led directly to detente with the Soviets. Nixon worked with Brezhnev to ease Cold War tensions, culminating in the Salt March Treaty to limit nuclear weapons. But what's fascinating is how he balanced this with other global challenges, like that massive airlift of supplies to Israel during the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
Well, speaking of challenges, let's talk about what he faced at home. The economy was dealing with this weird combination of inflation and unemployment, stagflation, that nobody really knew how to handle.
Right? And his response was pretty dramatic. He ended the gold standard in 1971, completely transforming the global financial system. But you know what's often overlooked? His domestic achievements. The EPA, the Clean Air Act, and the Endangered Species Act, these were revolutionary environmental protections that would probably be considered radical by today's standards.
And didn't he actually push civil rights forward too, like with school desegregation and affirmative action?
Oh, yeah, the Philadelphia Plan was groundbreaking for workplace diversity. But then we have to talk about Vietnam. His peace with honor strategy was classic Nixon, promising to end U.S. involvement while simultaneously expanding the war into Cambodia and Laos. He finally signed the Paris Peace Accords in 1973, but the path there was complicated.
That's what makes Watergate so mind boggling. Why would someone who has achieved so much risk it all with a break in that wasn't even necessary for his reelection?
That's the tragic irony. Those five men caught breaking into the Democratic National Committee headquarters. It was such a small thing compared to what it unleashed, but it was the cover up that really did him in, especially those White House tapes.
The fact that he recorded everything in the Oval Office, that decision alone shows something about his personality.
Absolutely fascinating psychological insight. Here's a quote that really captures it. When the president does it, that means that it is not illegal. That mindset, combined with his deep paranoia and insecurity, created this perfect storm.
And then there's that famous resignation scene, the helicopter lifting off from the White House lawn, the final wave goodbye. It's such a powerful image of how far someone can fall.
But here's what's really relevant today. Nixon's presidency fundamentally changed how Americans view their government. The whole question of presidential power and its limits, the role of the media in politics, even how we talk about political scandals, adding gate to everything, all come from Nixon.
So, looking at his legacy as a whole, how do we balance it? The diplomatic achievements, the environmental protections, civil rights enforcement against Watergate, and the abuse of power?
Maybe that's precisely what makes Nixon's story so important. It shows how outstanding achievements and terrible mistakes can come from the same person, how leadership requires both vision and character. His presidency really encapsulates these fundamental tensions in American politics and human nature itself.
That's why his story remains so relevant today, Pappy. Nothing about his legacy is simple.
And perhaps that's the most critical lesson from Nixon's presidency, Ben. How power can be both constructive and destructive. How the same qualities that make someone effective can also lead to their downfall. It's a reminder that in politics, as in life, nothing is ever just black and white.